Hello fellow sim racers. There's a bit of a buzz about iRacing at the moment. Maybe it's the new tyre model, maybe it's the new season, or perhaps the impressive looking damage model. But for me, what's renewed my interest is this little touring car. The Audi RS3 LMS TCR. A clumsy name perhaps, but the car is anything but. Okay, so let's address the elephant in the room straight away. Yes, it's a front-wheel drive car, and that means that some people will be struggling to control their gag reflex at the very thought of the thing. But those people are idiots, and let me tell you why. Front-wheel drive touring cars provide some of the best door-to-door racing you'll ever see, and that translates over to sim racing perfectly well. But you do have to drive them like front-wheel drive cars, or the experience is, well, it's going to suck. Honestly, if you drive the RS3 and you think the handling's bad, then I can tell you that the problem is almost certainly in the seat and not in the code. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the car. And first impressions are, well, very good. As far as European hot hatches go, the RS3 is a pretty decent looking car, and the in-game representation certainly looks the part both inside and out. The real car is available with a traditional sequential gearbox or the S-tronic dual clutch arrangement that's featured in iRacing. What this means in practice is that this is a two-pedal car, and the software does all of the clutch work for you, but more about that later. This car is all about the racing, but before I get into that, a word about the driving characteristics. When you drive the Audi out of the pits for the first time, you'll be confronted with a world of understeer. With the new tyre model, this car in particular takes a little bit of time to get up to temperature, and those first couple of laps, things can, well, they feel pretty mushy on cold tyres, and that's fantastic. Once everything's nice and toasty, the handling is brilliant. This is a car that loves some trail braking at turn-in. It helps the car rotate, and honestly, the feeling when the back end is a little loose is really very good, and much more intuitive than previous tyre models have allowed in my opinion. The rear isn't perhaps quite as deadly as some may expect, and on the default setup, keeping the rear tyres in the right temperature window seems pretty straightforward actually, which isn't always the case with front-wheel drive cars. With ABS, getting the car stopped and turned in is pretty straightforward, and if you do overdo it with the trail braking and things get a little bit loose in the back, it has plenty of power available to do that front-wheel drive party trick where you pin the throttle and just drive away from all of your problems. I've read a variety of opinions about the force feedback for the Audi, but I must admit I really like the way that this feels on my open SimWheel setup. There's a lot of dynamic range in the forces, and the feel and detail in particular when the car's understeering is really excellent. That all being said, I do wonder if that wide dynamic range and subtlety may make for a very light feeling wheel on a belt or gear driven system, which has been the case with some other similar cars on some sims in the past. If you've driven the Audi on a gear or belt wheel, then please let me know what it feels like in the comments. I mentioned earlier that this is modelled on the S-tronic car with the DSG box, so with no manual clutch there is a form of rudimentary launch control, though with no traction control you're still going to have to do a fair bit of work with your right foot to get off the line cleanly. Remembering of course that this is a front-wheel drive car and all the weight transfers away from the front when you accelerate. The start procedure is pretty simple. Put your foot on the brake, engage first gear, nail the gas pedal and wait for the green light. The engine will rev up to a predetermined RPM, which you can adjust in the setup menu, and when you release the brake, off you go. This does limit the wheel spin to some extent, but careful use of your right foot and perhaps a short shift to second gear are still needed to get the most out of your launch. As for the racing side of things, it's currently week 13, so obviously some caveats apply. First of all, it's great to see that the collision thresholds seem pretty high, which allows for some proper touring car door banging. Now it remains to be seen if those thresholds will be adjusted, but for now seems pretty, well, permissive. The Pilot Challenge Series schedule looks pretty good and is packed with a whole host of traditional touring car tracks that should provide some pretty epic racing, and also Monza. Speaking of the Pilot Challenge, I can't be the only person wishlisting potential GT4 cars that could be added next year. And on the subject of multi-class racing, I presume the Audi will be added to the VLN series as well. My only minor complaint about the inclusion of the Audi is that the Pilot Challenge series is currently in C-Class, alongside the likes of Camel GT, IndyCar and IMSA sports cars. But the Audi feels like a really great AmDriver car. By contrast, the Ferrari 488 GT3 is a much faster and much trickier car, but the 488 Challenge is a D-Class series, which on the face of it doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. But that minor gripe aside, the Audi TCR is really impressive. And this is a car that I really hope will remain popular after the traditional Season 1 excitement has died down. As Jimmy said in his video, iRacing really did need some proper touring cars, and I think this absolutely delivers the goods. So that about wraps things up for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this in the future. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.